Welcome to Q News special coverage. I'm Hada Al-Hamalawi, and tonight, global tensions escalate on two fronts. Israel intercepts an aid ship bound for Gaza carrying high-profile activists, while U.S. troop deployments spark outrage amid protests in Los Angeles. Stay with us as we bring you these unfolding stories. Israeli occupation forces have seized the British-flagged aid yacht Madeleine, detaining its 12-member crew, including activist Greta Thunberg and French MEP Rima Hassan. The Madeleine, operated by the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, was en route to Gaza, carrying a symbolic amount of humanitarian aid, such as rice and baby formula, to draw attention to the worsening humanitarian crisis in the war-torn enclave. The Israeli Foreign Ministry confirmed the seizure, calling it the selfie yacht of celebrities, and said that the aid would be delivered to Gaza via official channels. France has said that it would work to ensure the rapid return home of French citizens aboard a boat carrying aid bound for Gaza that was intercepted by Israeli security forces. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot confirmed that 6 French nationals were aboard the seized vessel Madeleine. Barrot said that France had warned its citizens in advance of the risks and is now seeking consular access to ensure their safe return. He added that France remains in contact with Israeli authorities to guarantee protection and facilitate repatriation. Meanwhile, Spain has summoned Israel's acting ambassador to protest the interception of the Madeleine ship, which was on a humanitarian mission to Gaza. Spanish Deputy Prime Minister and Labor Minister condemned the hijacking of the aid ship, calling the act a violation of international law, demanding a strong EU response. She expressed solidarity with detained volunteers and called for their immediate release. Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the occupied Palestinian territories, called on the British government to take urgent action to ensure the release of the ship Madeleine and its crew. In a post on the platform X, the UN rapporteur stated that the interception and seizure of the Madeleine by Israeli forces in international waters require a full explanation from the Israeli authorities. And for further analysis on the matter, Mohammed Izzeddin, Al Ahram managing editor from Cairo, joins us. Welcome to Q News, Mr. Izzeddin. Now, what is your opinion on the Israeli assault on the aid ship Madeleine after it approached the shores of Gaza?
Thank you so much for having me on Q News. Of course, it's a true violation of international laws first because it was intercepted in the international waters. Secondly, it was reported that it's a humanitarian ships carrying human rights activists and international figures, and therefore the identity of the ships and its passengers were well known to the Israeli authorities. Second, it's against humanity because they're violating the rights of the staff of the ship and the activists also taking over and seizing aid was described by the group as the kidnapping of the passengers, and therefore the Israeli authority not only carries military operations against unarmed civilians in Gaza, but it also hinders any humanitarian aid access, including this symbolic volume of access. Of course, that it's a bad day for humanity and a new addition to the violation records of Israel regarding Gaza and assaulting even international activists.
Could the international community take strong action against Israel following this assault?
Certainly, there will be a reaction from the international community. However, on the other hand, Israel has a long record of violations against international activists, and it reached killing some of them, as the Palestinian journalists who were killed during a military operation against unarmed civilians' houses. So there is a long record of assaulting activists, including Israeli ones, who oppose, and even the peaceful protests carried out by some individuals, whether inside the occupation state or other international nationals. Of course, the Arab and the Palestinian activists are always killed, such as the Palestinian journalist case, and several other media personnel who were killed recently. The Israeli commitment towards these cases is completely not there, and this will be a new addition to the record of Israeli violations in the field of human rights and aid.
Mr. Azzeddin, will Trump take a strong stance against Netanyahu's administration in the coming period, or this is very unlikely to happen?
I think that the US administration, when it comes to Israel, there are unannounced decisions. Of course, there is the lack of satisfaction on the US side towards the Israeli situation, because it was embarrassed more than once recently, and there was almost an agreement in the final amendment phase by Steve Witkoff, and then Trump stated the ceasefire agreement would be signed today or tomorrow, and he was failed by the Israeli government and Netanyahu, who is afraid and counting the hours, afraid of the fallout of the government, and there are real pressures from the far right government. If a ceasefire is reached, the government would fall, and the voters will head to early elections once again, and it will be the end of Netanyahu's government. He's well aware of this, and that's why he's keen on this fragile balance between the far right and the generals, as he's afraid of legal accountability for the internal pressures by the detainees' families and the problems regarding the governance, and his will to dismiss the this gets him into a new circle of tensions and internal divisions, and that's why the US administration is watching all this. And I think that there should be an announced directives to the Israeli government. On the other hand, there are pressures not only by the United States but also by the mediators, by the international community. Egypt is exerting pressures and approaching the international community for a ceasefire deal, and Qatar has recently announced that there might be a response to the amended conditions in the ceasefire agreement that was redrafted by Wetkoff. If it gets approved by Hamas or the Palestinian resistance, there will be a new visit by Wetkoff to the region, and actually might sign the ceasefire deal during the coming few days.
How can a ceasefire agreement in
وكيف
Gaza
الوقت
be
إطلاق
reached as quickly as possible, in your own opinion? Sir, I was asking you, how can a ceasefire agreement in Gaza be reached as quickly as possible?
There are attempts and efforts now exerted by Egypt and Qatar to find common grounds, and there are international pressures by the international community's stances announced one by one by the European Union states go and heading to imposing um, sanctions and ending some cultural activities with Israel, and there are diplomatic efforts to mobilize an international alliance by Egypt and Qatar to facilitate and streamline all the ways possible. Egypt has been working in this regard to reach a complete ceasefire and an unhindered humanitarian aid access, and therefore there are hours and communications with the Palestinian resistance and all international parties and Egypt and Qatar to reach a ceasefire deal, especially that re-entering the humanitarian aid with the current shape is not meeting the desired goals. So in addition to the injured and the death toll and the lack of food supplies, there is also the insufficiency of the food supply and the military rule plan to divide the Gaza Strip and disseminating the red papers for evacuation and displacing the population. There are a lot of efforts taken by the mediators, Egypt and Qatar, during the past few hours, and that we might actually see a ceasefire deal during the upcoming few days.
Sir, could Netanyahu's trial lead to his removal from office in the near future? Is that a possibility?
The fall of the Israeli government is expected at any point now, so it won't be a surprise if the government falls during the upcoming few days. There are internal pressures and there are divisions inside the coalition led by the Likud party, and there is criticism by Benny Gantz or others, and consequently the influencers inside the Israeli government, in addition to the public pressure by the detainees' families and the dissatisfaction regarding the economic decline, whether regarding the budget or the economic activities and trade activities, as well as the ghost of an international embargo to be imposed on Israel due to the policies of the current government and the tensions of the Israeli relations with the world. All of these pressure might lead to the deterioration or the fallout of the Netanyahu government, and we haven't even mentioned the failure of the war on Gaza to achieve its due goals and the United States pressures. So the situation of the Netanyahu government is very fragile, and he might, if the government falls, he will be held accountable legally and he will be prosecuted.
So speaking of the same context and possibilities, is it possible for the Knesset to vote to dismiss Netanyahu's government?
If we see a division in the relations by the influencers and the scene, especially Ben Gvir and other far-right officials, and if Netanyahu submits to a deal for agreement, the government will typically fall by its own members. The government is threatened by not reaching the ceasefire agreement, and if a ceasefire agreement is reached, because some members will withdraw and it will fall eventually either way, and Netanyahu will be dismissed and removed.
Well, that was Mr. Mohammed Izzuddin joining us from Cairo. He is Al Ahram managing editor. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on Q News. And ladies and gentlemen, now for the latest developments in the United States.
Donald Trump is his name, and he's there to stay.
As unlikely, impossible is now reality.
America powerful. We will win, win, win. And we will make America great again. We will very quickly make America great again.
U.S. President Donald Trump described the participants in the Los Angeles protests as paid rebels in a post on his social media platform, Truth Social. Earlier, Trump had called for the arrest of masked protesters, referring to Trump posting on Truth Social said that the city has been invaded by illegal aliens and criminals and vowed to liberate it from what he called a migrant invasion. Trump said that violent mobs were attacking federal agents attempting to carry out deportation operations and announced that he has directed top officials, including Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, to take all the necessary action to restore order. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and California Governor Gavin Newsom have engaged in a heated exchange on social media regarding the deployment of National Guard troops to Los Angeles. Newsom condemned the deployment as deranged, accusing the Trump administration of escalating tensions. Hegseth fired back, defending the mobilization as necessary to protect law enforcement and restore order. Meanwhile, California Governor Gavin Newsom has requested that the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump withdraw the deployment of the National Guard in the city of Los Angeles. The governor stated that California plans to file a lawsuit against Trump over his mobilization of the National Guard to suppress immigration-related protests in Los Angeles.
What's happening on the streets, tents and encampments, it simply cannot continue. It cannot be a way of life, living out on the streets, in sidewalks, in what are almost become permanent structures.
Meanwhile, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has criticized the U.S. government's recent immigration raids and National Guard deployment in Los Angeles, calling for a more humane and comprehensive approach. She condemned the use of raids and violence, emphasizing that immigration issues should be addressed through dialogue and reform that respects all Mexicans living across the border. She highlighted the contributions of Mexican immigrants in the U.S., describing them as honest people seeking better lives for their families. The president also assured that Mexico stands ready to welcome back any migrants who wish to return, underscoring the importance of respecting human rights throughout the process.
Las mexicanas y los mexicanos que viven en Estados Unidos son hombres y mujeres de bien, son hombres honestos, que se fueron a Estados Unidos a buscar una mejor vida para ellos y para aportar a sus familias. No son criminales.
Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass has condemned the Trump administration for inciting fear and chaos through a series of aggressive immigration raids across the city. Speaking at a news conference, Bass criticized federal agents for targeting day laborers, street vendors, and factory workers in high-profile sweeps that she said traumatized communities. She called the deployment of federalized troops a dangerous escalation and accused the administration of using the raids to advance a political agenda, not public safety. Bass urged residents to remain peaceful, warning that violence could play into what she called the administration's efforts to stir unrest.
It's not about public safety. There's clearly no plan, and there is clearly no policy. To protest, that's their First Amendment right. But people should also exercise that right peacefully. We do not want to play into the administration's hands. We're working with officials, we're organizing resources, but what we're seeing in Los Angeles is chaos that is provoked by the administration. When you raid Home Depot and workplaces, when you tear parents and children apart, and when you run armored...
And for further analysis on the matter, Maher Abdelkader joins us from Washington, D.C. Welcome to Q News, Mr. Abdelkader. How might the deployment of National Guard troops without state approval affect the balance of power between federal and state authorities in the United States?
It affects it a lot. First of all, my regards to you and to your viewers.
Thank you.
It affects it a lot because I think, Trump, he's trying to, revenge from the Democrats in their major states, the two major or three major states that everybody relies on during the election is California and New York, and they are both Democratic states. So it is pay time for him. Right now, he is invoking certain rules utilizing the army in California, and that is not the case in this situation. Usually, you take control of the Coast Guard and you invoke utilizing the army during a crisis or invasion by foreign army. Unfortunately, the White House and Trump specifically describe and state that what's happening in California right now is chaos, but also he equates it to occupation by foreign nationals, and that's not the case. They went to a local hardware store called Home Depot, where people or contractors buy merchandise, and there are daily laborers usually in front of this store in California and in other states looking for, just work for 1 day or 2 days. And he raided that place, arrested 44, and he started instigating the situation and elevating it to a major crisis, opposing to the city mayor and opposing to the governor, where they both said things are under control, they can be handled by local police. But he did not listen to them, and he disagreed with them, and he even called the governor of California as a scum, which is really very bad language, and it's a street language. For a president of the United States to call an elected governor a scum, that is not something very, it can be received by the people in a good, positive manner. But we all know that he's trying to revenge and he's trying to pay back, Democrats. That's number one. Number two, Mr. Trump is an artistic deviator from, things that he doesn't want people to look at. One, there is a crisis between him and Elon Musk, and Elon Musk alleged, support to opponents of Trump. So that's a major issue he doesn't want the media and other newspapers to talk about. The second thing is the budget. He sent the budget to Congress at night, not allowing enough time for people to look at it, where Elon Musk said, this budget will cause major problems in the United States and will add to the deficit. Now, he has two major elements in discussion in American media and in America news outlets. So he wants to divert attention. So he escalated the situation in California to riots and to instigating people, making arrests without, resorting to legal means. Where when you arrest someone, you get a warrant from the court, and then you take the person to the court, and then the court decides what's happening. He is using federal police to avoid going through the due process, which is the legal process. Of course, Americans they don't like it, and they're not going to like it because it violates the basic rule that this president is resorting to using his own power and distancing himself from the law. And usually, like the Coast Guard is controlled by the governor, and the only time the president evoked that during wartime, an invasion from an outside entity.
Yes, I would like also to ask you, sir, as a researcher and expert in U.S. affairs, what are the potential long-term impacts of the Trump administration's immigration enforcement strategies on public trust in federal institutions?
Well, there is a huge division right now in the United States when it comes to politics and certain issues. You have a hardcore supporters of Trump that, unfortunately, it's the rich people, the white and the extreme influential people that they support Trump and they like his policies. But on the other hand, the majority of hardworking people or Democrats, they don't like this. So the long-lasting impact, it will, enhance the division between Republican and Democrats and between rich and, the majority of middle class. So what's happening is not pleasant, and it's going to have a long impact on the government and on the structure of the civil work among people within the United States. I guess at one point or another, this will be a hot issue during the upcoming midterm election for the Congress, where 1/3 of the Senate will be up to election and 435 members of the House of Representatives, next November. And if the election results in majority Democrats, they will paralyze, Trump's administration ability to make any resolution, make any law, because when the majority with the Democrat, they're going to oppose everything that the president do. This is exactly what happened at the Obama administration. Yes. He got elected and he had, Congress in his side. And after 2 years, he lost the Congress where
I get your
the majority was with Republicans. So
yes.
The history will repeat itself.
Yes, I get your point. That was Mr. Meher Abdel Qadir. He is a political researcher in U.S. affairs, joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us here on Q News. And ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of our special coverage for tonight. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Qnews EG to stay informed. I'm Hala Al-Hamalawi. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.